All right, and we'll just kind of feel this one out.
Yeah. I'll try not to turn on the host hat too much. It's just I'm a music nerd, so
I mean, it's fine. I mean, that's why we have you here, Matt.
yeah, I know.
You are the music nerd to be here.
That's
this
fair.
conversation. And welcome back to the Men of Steel podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, J. Mike Folsom.
Welcome back, everybody. So glad to have you here.
Yeah, we're going to rock out today because we have a returning guest. We have Matt Storm.
Hey, what's going on? I'm back again. Happy to be
AKA
here.
DJ Stormageddon for this conversation.
Yeah.
Because we are continuing our conversation about music of Superman. And specifically, today we are talking about music that has been inspired by Superman, which there's a lot.
Yeah, there is.
A lot more as you think.
Yeah, it's funny when I pitched this idea to Case, like this is what I was thinking of. And then Case, of course, always like, well, we have to talk about the Superman themes too, which of course we do. But like, I've just been listening to pop music for a very long time, and across the gamut, there's always been songs about Superman, referencing Superman, his story, his characters, and like it just kind of seemed inevitable to do something like this. Also, I did 250 episodes of a music podcast, so like I'm kind of a nerd or whatever. It's fine. Like,
yeah,
the last important
well,
part.
like when we started the show, we always knew that there were some songs that we wanted to talk about that we wouldn't have like a great framework for. You know, because like the idea was whenever we talk about a piece of Superman media. We would talk about the themes at some point in it.
Yeah.
And like that sometimes happens, it sometimes doesn't. But like that was an idea when we started the show. It'd be like a thing for us to talk about whenever we talked about a new movie or animated series or whatever. But there's just pop culture tracks. Like, you know, when you mentioned it, it was like, yes, because like I've always wanted to talk about Kryptonite by Three Doors Down, which, you know, is a weird thing to say out loud.
Yeah, Three Doors Down, a band that has not aged well. Not because there's anything really particularly wrong with their music, but they just haven't done as much lately. They were sort of a one-hit wonder with Kryptonite. They had some other singles after that and kind of had a steady career as all bands in the 2000s. But yeah, Kryptonite is one of those songs that, like, if you are a fan of Superman, or even if you're not, if you have a pulse and listen to music at some point in the 2000s, you know this song. You know, it just kind of was ubiquitous with Superman at the time, even though it has no official connection to Superman other than using proper nouns from the franchise.
Yeah, it's funny because like that was my jumping on point for this conversation, because it was like, okay, that one stands out to me. The title is a specific reference to a thing from Superman. In it, they say, "Will you still call me Superman?" But there's not a lot in the actual like lyrics or the musical construction of the song. But then the music video has like a lot of like superhero iconography. I think either this came out at the same time that the movie Mystery Men came out, or I forget if the music video actually had tie-in stuff. No, it was Smash Mouth, which was the official tie-in for Mystery Men. Yeah. The All-Star one, but either way, it had the same kind of like look to it, where it was like, here's like low-budget superhero costumes in that like oversaturated way that music videos from the 90s were really doing, like, you know, late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah,
were really into it. Yeah, and I mean, like, that's also just kind of like our age. Like, that was exactly where we were on that one. So it like stood out to me, and I was like, you know, we'll probably have some songs that are kind of like that, where they have a couple of allusions to the character, and that's about it. And, you know, like, because the second song I went to in my head was Superman by Goldfinger, which as I put in the notes in the Google Docs, aka the song from Tony Hawk, and Matt got mad, and I'm like, I have been to Goldfinger concerts.
Look, I took personal offense to it because, like, I know more than 3 songs by Goldfinger, and as a ska fan, like, I just like, I love their catalog, and so all of my friends, and look, I play video games too, obviously, but like everyone, when that song was on Tony Hawk, I was like, oh, that song from Tony Hawk, like, it has a name, it's in the chorus. Come on, it's not that hard. Goldfinger, also not a tough band name to remember. But yeah, no, this song, I remember like my high school era, this being one of those songs. Like, just, it was everywhere. I listened to it all the time. I too, though badly, played a lot of Tony Hawk and always loved hearing this song in the rotation. But this one also, like, it's very much like I'll be your Superman. Like it's not a direct reference to the comics. It's kind of just the idea of the Superman, not this Superman.
Yeah, and that's actually what I wanted to kind of get to in my general thought about what I expected when I was going into like songs that were like Superman inspired. Like I thought it was going to be like this, where the name's in there. It's a fun song. I like the song a lot. There is nothing to do with Superman in it besides like the concept of a Superman. You know, like it's the thing we've talked about a bit, where Superman started off more as like an idea or a title than as like a name for a person. That this idea of like a Superman, like saying like only a Superman could have saved those people. Only a Superman could have endured that. You know, like the idea of humanity taken to this extreme, and with the additional like heroic qualities like laid on top of it, because you assume that in addition to a superior physicality, you assume a superior morality to them, like as just this like broader concept. You know, it's the knight in shining armor idea. And I figured that a lot of songs were going to be like that, because like the next one that came to my mind was Superman by Eminem, which has nothing to do with Superman besides like being like, oh no, I can like I have the endurance of a Superman in the sack, which is, not the idea.
No, that's a song that I hadn't listened to in a long time. And I loved Eminem when he first came out. Like I was a big fan of the first couple records, like everyone was at the time. Mm-hmm. But like as I learned more about the kind of person he was, how misogynistic he was, and racist and homophobic and all of that stuff. And no, playing one performance with Elton John doesn't magically make him not homophobic. It doesn't work that way. Like I re-listened to that song just now because I remembered the chorus. Like it's got that kind of rhythmic chorus that feels very sexual, and so like I remember that is burned in my brain. But like re-listening, it's just like it's the misogynistic almost like idea of a Superman. Only a man can please you, and I'm the best kind of man, kind of bravado, which has its place to a level. But like just knowing what I know about him as well and listening to it, like it's very much Superman equals super sexy, which as we've all talked about on the show at some point or another, like there are plenty of very sexy Supermen, but this is not what I'm thinking of when I think of that. Like this is just very much like I can please you, he was newly single at the time and all of that stuff. Like it's kind of a gross song. It's why I actually thought it was so important to put the Superman song by Taylor Swift on, because that's just kind of like rainbows and bubblegum and gumdrop. It's like a very
butterflies.
Yeah, it's very saccharine sweet. It's very much like I Let the Superman Go, like talking about. And this one actually does have some character references in it, very loosely, not specifically calling out DC stuff, but like this is the kind of thing that I like, just because this feels very, honest and emotional and sweet, which is a lot of things that are often in Superman comics. Superman is not misogynistic and obsessed with sex and obsessed with women. So like I prefer this kind of Superman love song to the Eminem thing, which is why I thought it was important to place that in our list as well.
Yeah. On a similar note, when we were when I was trying to figure out our list, because initially I threw in the Eminem song, I threw in Goldfinger, and I threw in Kryptonite, and that was my initial list that I put on the Google Doc, and I was like, please, everyone, add to this. And then none of us did anything for like 2 months. So I found a list on the AV Club, though, that cited a bunch of songs that were inspired by Superman. And a lot of them are of the type that we're talking about, where Superman is a concept, is a term that people bring up. It is a colloquialism that we use to describe like an impressive person in whatever way we mean. So like a thing like Barbra Streisand's song, Superman, which the cover to the single is her wearing a Superman shirt, and like the opening lyric is that she feels like she can fly when she's with you, the Superman. But it's entirely a metaphor. It's just talking about the feelings that the character, the singer, is going through. But there's no actual like Superman stuff in there. And I kind of assumed that was going to be a lot of it. And then I actually looked at the lyrics for some of these other songs that we have on the list, and that is not the case.
Yeah. For sure. Before we move away from the stuff that's kind of just referencing, I did put a song in here that I knew I would get the exact reaction out of Case that I did. So the song Superman by Laszlo Bane, which most people would know as the Scrubs theme. Like, I actually accidentally discovered Laszlo Bane before I ever watched Scrubs. It was very close, but like, and Scrubs is one of my favorite TV shows. Sometime if you ever meet me in person after listening to this, ask me about my Donald Faison Zach Braff story. It's good, and awfully embarrassing for me, but it's a good story. I won't get into it now.
Story, sure.
I do. But like this song is very much referential. Like it's about someone wishing they could be like, I'm no Superman. Like I can't be this super person. And like the show Scrubs dealt with a lot of superhero complexes. I mean, think about Dr. Cox as a character is very much like Superman, like very intimidating but powerful on the outside, but wants to help, but like is actually hurting on the inside and struggling, which Superman of course does in his later years especially. Like I love that kind of dichotomy with that song specifically. And also it's just a catchy tune. Like beyond just what's played in Scrubs, it's actually just a fun little kind of like plucky.
Yeah, it's a fun little ditty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the name of the artist when I was thinking about songs, but I knew the Scrubs theme song was called Superman because that's the big lyric at the end.
Yeah.
But that was a nice one just because it was the theme song for a really popular show and had, I think does a really good job of conveying the sort of burden that we talk about with the character.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that was brought up just because it's like, yeah, that was like Scrubs back in the day was like a show that was such a great like entry point for like a lot of music. Like this, I mean, I guess TV in general in the early 2000s, there were just a lot of shows that were like, yeah, we're going to have a good soundtrack. And like, that'll be a thing for like marketing,
Yep.
pre iTunes domination of music. Like Napster existed, the internet existed, but like the internet hadn't taken over the music industry yet. Like you've got like Scrubs, you've got like the OC, like all like even Smallville. Like,
Smallville used to do it at the end of every episode. There was like a little ballad they play. For a sad
and things before that, like Dawson's Creek, I think teen shows in general had gotten really good about licensing up and coming songs and like doing a really good job with it. And it's now becoming an issue with streaming where they can't get the rights to those songs anymore.
Watching Scrubs on streaming has been horrible. I started rewatching Scrubs because the aforementioned Zach Braff and Donald Faison during the pandemic started a Scrubs rewatch podcast as the two leads of Scrubs. And like I have some of the DVDs, but I didn't know where they were. This was after my apartment fire, so I was displaced, and so like everything was in boxes. So I started watching it on Hulu, and Hulu and streaming doesn't get the rights to all the songs. They have some, but others they just filled in with other stuff. And like Bill Lawrence handpicked a lot of those tracks. The cast handpicked a lot of those tracks. So replacing them with anything just doesn't feel right. I also it sucks.
Wrong.
It bums me out, especially considering I love the show so much. But I do want to mention before we move off of Scrubs also, that show also had, I think, more than one specific Superman references. Like, there's definitely the classic, like, Superman behind the glass window with light shining, showing his silhouette thing with Dr. Cox when JD refers to him as his hero. Like, they've definitely, it's like the reason that song is so important to me to talk about here is because not just the song referenced Superman, but the show often referenced pop culture and specifically Superman as well.
Before we move on completely from songs that, honestly, the connection is tenuous at best.
Yeah.
I do want to mention this one because it was on the list, and I laughed really hard when I read that it was on the list, which is Soulja Boy. Crank That.
Crank That, Soulja Boy. His first single.
So it's on the AV Club list, which we will link in the description for this episode. And so for those who are not like going out in like 2006, this is a song. This was like a song of the summer for that. It was like 2006, or I guess it was 2007 when it was the song of the summer. It was just everywhere. A popular song because it has sort of a goofy dance that everyone kind of knows. And then in the song there is the line "Superman that hoe," and that's gross.
Yeah, it's not a classy song, but it's still like a really very much a fan favorite. I mean, more recently when I was playing Fuser on Twitch, like it's one of the songs in Fuser. Like it's just a popular club hit, and like.
Oh yeah, no, like the beats in there are great. Like the dance, I actually still remember somehow.
It's got a crazy hook.
Yeah, it's a well crafted pop song, which I know would like the highbrow rap fans who like think, oh, rap can't be pop, which is bullshit. It is absolutely a pop song. Like it's a rap song, but it's absolutely a pop song because it hits all of those things, like you were saying, J Mike. Like it's super catchy. The hook especially like. Rap songs can have catchy hooks, absolutely, but that makes them very pop in their inspiration for sure.
It was all over the place in high school.
Yeah,
I hated it so much after a while.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not?
I was like, "Oh, can we choose another song, please? Come on."
Like, for the record, the Superman that hoe is like you throw a sheet on a girl after you had sex with them and like see if the sheet makes them look like they're like flying like Superman.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's gross.
Yeah.
Like it's a tenuous connection at best. There's more details to that one that I don't want to go into. It's all bad. But it is possible to do like interesting rap songs that actually do tie into Superman. And Matt, you actually included one that I thought was a really good reference that wasn't on the list that we were talking about, which was Luther by Lex, the Lexicon Artist.
Yeah, so Lex the Lexicon Artist, if you follow me on Twitter at all, I never shut up about. Lex I became friends with when she first started rapping, I don't even know how many years ago now. With the pandemic, everything just feels like 10 years longer, even though it's not. But we became, fast friends, and she was a guest on Autographs pretty early on, and is just a really cool, awesome human. And when she put out her first full-length record, one of the songs, Luther, on it was this like pounding deep bass kind of bravado song that you hear, especially in a lot of nerdcore rap songs. But it's from the perspective of Lex rapping as Lex Luthor, and it's a funny play on words because she's Lex the Lexicon Artist, Lex Luthor, but it's very much this kind of what Lex is thinking, how he's going to finally beat Superman. And it just not only is it a masterfully rapped and made song, but it's really cool to see this side of it from the villain perspective. I feel like that's more common now in pop music, to see the villain's perspective. We have lots of TV shows and movies also featuring villains or anti-heroes, but pop music didn't always do that, and I feel like it's more common now. And this song was really important to me to bring up because it's so cool. I'm a geek, and it's part of the nerdcore genre, and nerdcore primarily focuses on no alluding to references. It is full on reference. There's no innuendo. It's just endo. And so it's one of those things that I love the idea of this kind of bravado rap, because even though I hear Lex's voice, I can picture Lex rapping this, which is really kind of cool.
It'd be kind of cool to have a Lex Luthor Superman rap battle,
right?
In the middle of Metropolis, like 8 Mile.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a really great song. If you haven't listened to Lex, the Lexicon Artist, at all, I highly recommend it. She's done some amazing stuff. But yeah, I also for me, I picture because we've talked about this. If I picture Lex Luthor, I picture the Clancy Brown voiced animated series Lex Luthor, and I totally kind of want to make a fan rap video now of kind of the mouth dubbing thing that people do, but with Lex from that cartoon rapping this song. I think that would be fun. But yeah, it's dope, and this one is not. We were talking a lot about light references and kind of just at a name at best. In deep, talking about kryptonite, talking about specific characters, specific motives. It's really well done.
Yeah, and that was a nice thing to come across songs that were much more explicit. In this list, some of them are just are way up there, the Jimmy Olsen Blues.
Yeah,
where it's that's going to be more explicit there. There were a few. There was one Matchbox 20. Real World.
Yes.
I was I'm kind of dubious about this. The first verse isn't anything related, and then the second verse is just from Krypton, as super being oh yeah, no, that's pretty, yeah, that's on the nose right there.
Yeah, I grew up listening to Matchbox 20. They're one of my favorite bands, and Rob Thomas's lyrics are very much on the nose. And what's funny is I just didn't think musicians could be nerds when I was a kid. It's stupid, obviously, but so when I first heard the song on their first record, I was like, dude's talking about Superman? Cool.
Right.
It just didn't seem possible to me because this is way before a lot of the more explicit stuff, or even things now like Lizzo making incredibly nerdy references in her tracks and stuff like that. That just wasn't common, I felt, when I was growing up, not ubiquitously anyway. And so a big alt-rock pop band to mention Superman so specifically, I was like, this is cool.
Nerd culture wasn't that big of a thing back then.
No.
And it's so cool to see it it's blossoming and becoming what it is today. And all the movies and things that are out there now, we have so much stuff to gush about now.
Yeah. This is a slight tangent, but we've come full circle. The newest Ninja Turtles game that came out has a rap song by RZA on it and has a rap song by Mega Ran, one of arguably the most famous nerdcore rappers, who made his career rapping over Mega Man beats and now made a Ninja Turtles song. It's so cool to see it wrap back around, where people are now being celebrated for being nerds, and the stuff that kind of had to do in secret or to small audiences they can do now. And I obviously the Wu-Tang Clan is full of nerd references, but as a kid I just never clicked. I never realized that. But they're all gigantic nerds, the lot of them.
Yeah, I want to stop and take a second to look at the lyrics. I didn't have a chance to listen to all these. I want to look at the lyrics for T-Pain's, because T-Pain is a giant nerd.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah, I did not know what that song was, and I listened to it, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, well, because most people think of T-Pain as a producer and like a hype man, but like he did some seriously cool rap songs back in the day. I don't know that I'd heard this one before, but I listened to it when I saw it on the list.
I had never heard that song before, and I was like, T-Pain Superman. He had a Superman song? I was like, oh, it's a collab song. Oh, okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so talking about like T-Pain's Superman, which is with DJ Khaled. It opens with like doing a little bit of the John Williams score leading into it, and then you do get some lyrics in there. T-Pain, I know, is a giant nerd. Like, I know that T-Pain got his start as a musician by way of fixing people's computers, and someone gave him the software for auto-tuning as an exchange for him doing some work on a computer, and that's how he like learned how to like start making his own songs.
Yeah.
And I just like love that it just this fucking nerd.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, during the pandemic, he was Twitch streaming pretty regularly and like rating other people's like small Twitch streamers' Twitch pages and stuff. Like, he's a gigantic nerd. It's really great.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I mean, it was on the Epic Rap Battle.
Yep.
Yep. Stevie Wonder versus Wonder Woman.
Yep. Which was very good.
Yeah. So definitely like fun there. I mean, there's some of the whole like it's a rap song where it's just like look how awesome of a Superman I am kind of stuff going on in there. But like, you know, there's also some direct like again it opens with the John Williams score. So like,
well, and like I don't mind the bravado. Like I just said, the Lex bravado stuff. The reason the Eminem bravado stuff doesn't work is A, because he's outed as an incredibly shitty misogynist and like racist and homophobe, but also just there are different levels, right? He's not there's no jokes in Eminem's Superman. It's very much like it's just very much a sex song and about sex, and it's fine.
yeah.
But like, it's
which is weird because like Eminem became well known because of doing like kind of jokier rap songs.
Yes. And like has dressed as Superman in his music videos and dressed as Batman and Robin with Dr. Dre in his videos too.
Yeah.
So like, but he like always pushed back against nerd culture and hated being called a nerd and all that stuff. I think. I mean, I assume some of that comes from the sensitivity of being one of the most famous white rappers. Tons of white folks rap, but like he was like one of the most famous fast, and in a time where the ones who were doing it for a long time weren't as well known. And so I'm guessing,
especially in that era.
In that era, for sure.
You know, like I'm sure he got like a lot of Vanilla Ice comparisons.
Oh yeah.
And I say I'm sure because I'm like, wait, he like started as a rapper when like I was in junior high, so it's like, was I even aware of some of those? But I do remember people being like, well, you can't be a real rapper if you're white.
Right.
It was like a conversation point.
Which
and
I got also because Lord knows white people have stolen enough music from other people. So like I get that, like wanting to protect yourself and protect your music, but like, you know, still I don't like. But this song, the T-Pain song, feels playful, feels more fun.
Oh, it's very playful.
Yeah. And that comes from, I think, knowing the source material too a little bit.
Oh, while we were calling out people for shitty stuff, I do want to point out that Three Doors Down played at the Trump inauguration.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're shitholes. They're terrible. Like I don't. Yeah. No. Yeah.
I was real sad when I found that out.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no.
turns out a lot of people suck. And we learn more and more each day.
Although it also shows that like how many rungs down the ladder of fame Trump had to go through in 2016.
Yeah.
To settle on Three Doors Down as his inauguration band.
Yep. Yeah.
Like even in 2006 it would have been like, I feel like you're 10 years too late.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah.
So again, a lot of these I assumed were going to be kind of superficial, and then there are ones that actually were less so than I thought, and also tied in other ways. Like we've got Superman, It's Not Easy by Five for Fighting, which I am like 99% certain was on the Smallville soundtrack.
It had to be.
I cannot fathom a world where it wasn't. And if it wasn't, it's a Shazam situation, or like the Sinbad Shazam situation.
Yeah. Well, I believe the music video had Smallville. I thought it had Smallville clips in it, but maybe I missed it.
Gotta. But the lyrics are actually like pretty good for it as well, and like that was sort of a nice part in there as well. It's funny how often I do see allusions to either a yellow sun or some like things like that, sort of like setting up the characters pretty well.
Yeah.
This one has like a lot of like I'm more than a bird, I'm more than a plane lines in there, and like that's cool. You know, like again, Superman is a brand that is so big and in our conversation now. when we talk about Superman, the purest form of the character isn't really the comics. It isn't really any one thing. It is the collective of all the things that have been out there.
Yeah.
And so it's funny, all the things that we've like come to associate with the character, and like that just gets conveyed into these songs that want to allude to this, like, this hopeful power fantasy.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned the specific references. The reason I remember that Superman's powered by the yellow sun is because of the real world lyric, and kick that funky high on the yellow sun. Like, literally a lyric. And like, never thought of it that way, but he's absolutely getting high in any respect that you look at it. Like, I mean, it's he's flying towards the sun. But like, also, absolutely, he's absorbing the rays. It has a drug-like effect on his body. It makes him powerful, or feel powerful for sure. Like, all of that kind of stuff, I think, when it's on multiple levels. Also, Five for Fighting, the music video, at least the version I found, does not have stuff from Smallville in it, but I believe there's a cut with the Smallville stuff. Like, I feel like that exists.
Yeah.
It's just...
Well, it's like the Britney Spears Drive Me Crazy video. There's the original music video, and then when they made the movie that had that title, they recut in footage from Drive Me Crazy, the movie, into it.
Drive Me Crazy by Rob Thomas. No, not that one. That Rob Thomas.
Right.
I like when the songs kind of go more deeper into the Superman lore. I just think it's really interesting, and how the different bands interpret it. I mean, Superman's Dead by Our Lady of Peace isn't really about the specific death of Superman, but it's more about just like the failure of a hero. It's very angsty, very emo feeling, and like, I feel like the songs that do a broader narrative of the hero's journey don't always make those specific references as much, but were just as common as the ones that did make the specific references.
Yeah. And then there are the ones that are just like full on, like very explicit, like the Ides of March Superman song.
Yeah.
There are so many songs, by the way, that are, if you just type Superman into Spotify, you'll have like
endless.
A billion.
Like endless options. Like there's no end to that. But where it's like referencing Solomon Grundy, I was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Crash Test Dummies song also, like, has a newspaper with Superman on it, and, like, also has a ton of explicit references to Superman, and, like, mourning him not being around anymore. And, like, all of these songs about the death of Superman, the comic might have been out, but, like, it definitely wasn't as pervasive in pop culture as it is now, I feel like. And so that's always really interesting to me, is, like, and I didn't really know some of these songs even existed. Like, I like the Crash Test Dummies. Never knew this song existed until very recently.
Yeah. I think that is a theme that music explores a lot, where the idea that we used to have heroes and that we don't anymore, and like the people living now are just people and just doing their best. So many of these are like, I'm trying my best, but I'm not Superman.
Yeah.
And like the ones that actually like play with Superman often find the stance of being in a world without Superman in the wake of him having existed. And either that being like literally like Kal-El, the son of Krypton, yada, 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 Superman, or just whoever you find to be your hero, a society post the founding fathers for the U.S., or a society post King, like England post King Arthur, or whatever world you want to say. Like, we had this person who was our beacon of hope and is no longer there, our Charlemagne, and he cried because the Vikings will come when he falls, like kind of situation. Like, those are interesting points that I think resonate lyrically for people. Like, you can tell a story about how it feels to live in that world, and with so much of music being about emotion and the state of being like that, I think that becomes an interesting vantage point that a lot of these songs adopt. And some of these predate the death of Superman in the comics. It's just like, we used to have a hero and we don't anymore. I think that resonates.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I think that's an important part of this conversation too. Like, we could list Superman songs all day, but like, why do people write songs about Superman? Why that character specifically? Like, we jokingly mentioned before, like Chad Kroeger and the song Hero from the Spider-Man movie, which, like, love or hate those bands, Josie Scott and Chad Kroeger specifically, that song is catchy. It's a catchy song. It's a really well done music video. It was key to the movie, but like, why do we have songs like that? And I think the reality is, like, we all there's this wanting to look towards a fantasy and look towards to someone to protect us, and like, or separating ourselves from people, whether we're the Superman or we're projecting onto a Superman. I just think it's really fascinating that, like, if there were one or two songs about Superman or the Superman, fine, but like, in an age before like pop culture was pervasive and ubiquitous, tons of folks wrote about Superman as opposed to other characters. Like, there are songs that reference Batman too, but not on the level that Superman is. Even Spider-Man, like, has, the Ramones song Spider-Man and things like that. Like, but more of those are direct references. But Superman just exists in the pantheon of music in a way that I feel like no other hero does.
Yeah, there's no song that's quite like the Ballad of Barry Allen.
Yep.
You know, where it's just like how sad it is to be that character. I think having this conversation is making me think about a stance that I have about the viewpoint character in Superman stories shifting over time, where like earlier on the idea was it's young readers. In a lot of cases, it's either going to be a Jimmy Olsen type or just a passerby observing a character. Like, how amazing is it that we're telling stories about a hero like this? You're not that guy, but it's so cool, isn't it? That there's a guy that's that cool out there. Like even like Billy Batson in like Captain Marvel stuff was like, I'm not Captain Marvel. I can turn into him, but like he's still a different person. And let me tell you about the cool stories kind of component there. And that like comic books have often shifted or have shifted over time to being like we're inside the head of those characters. You know, Spider-Man I think is a big part of that. Like the Marvel age of like here's all the angst and so forth like really like contributes to that. And nowadays a lot of Superman books are really from the vantage point of Superman trying to deal with the world. But songs work really well from the standpoint of talking about a person they thought was cool or a person that they miss.
Yeah.
Like I think that makes music a really pure way of approaching this like earlier kind of perspective. You know, no one tells a story about like, oh God, wasn't it awesome when I was Hercules? But people tell stories about, oh, how cool was Hercules back in the day. And I think music really lends itself to like those kind of things. And when it's not, it's those like kind of songs where it's like, look how sexually awesome I am as a Superman. Like, you know, like that's the other side of that there. But like, a lot of these songs are like, oh God, we miss this character, or we need this person, or I feel so safe when I'm with this person. You know, it's like the Barbra Streisand lyrics there.
Yeah.
Like, and again, a lot of it is a metaphor. A lot of it isn't like saying that this is, you know, Clark Kent, whatnot, but saying I have found my version of this character. I have found, you know, if Superman is this like apogee that we're supposed to like look up to, we are now experiencing that in the real world, or we are feeling the loss of that or the longing for that in a way that like comics don't do anymore. Like, like you're supposed to be with the main character for the most part and not the side characters.
Yeah. There's this lack of awe for superheroes, and like the music does capture that. I mean, look, even all joking aside, like Bonnie Taylor's song Holding Out for a Hero, like this is like someone like in trouble, wanting a hero, right? Like needing someone to save her. And like I think that kind of perspective, like And it's not a damsel in distress song necessarily. It's like I'm holding out for a hero wherever all the heroes gone. Like, you know, I mean, you know, Paula Cole, the you know, where have all the, you know, cowboys gone? Like even like stretching it further beyond superheroes, like this longing for heroes, like you mentioned, Case, I think is also a very constant thing in pop music writing. I think that writing about Superman is easy because he's just ubiquitous. Like, it's possible for someone, though less likely, to not know who Spider-Man or Batman is, especially now. But I feel like anyone at any age, grandparent to small child, knows who Superman is. He's just kind of like the red, white, and blue. The character, like Captain America's almost gotten to that point, but like I feel like there's no hero who's just as recognizable about Superman. So if you're going to write a song about this nameless hero, why wouldn't you choose Superman? People, you don't have to explain anything. Like, that's why Three Doors Down, though they can go fuck themselves, like, they chose Kryptonite because people know what Kryptonite is. Almost anybody knows what Kryptonite is, even if you've never read a Superman comic.
Well, and because, like, Superman at a certain point is that hypothetical, arbitrary, adjective person thing concept. You know, it's so far out there. Like Batman is still more of a specific character.
Yep.
Yeah.
Superman, despite all of like the details that we have thrown on there, is still very much like just good person guy out there. You know, like a song that's not on this list is Wonder Boy by Tenacious D.
Right.
And like, you know, I think that's dealing with the same kind of ideas. They just didn't want to be as explicit as all that. Like, there have been superheroes named Wonder Boy, one of which is like a very thinly veiled Superman analog, like down to the point he's an alien who came on a meteor and crash landed and decided that he was going to help people and he can jump an eighth of a mile. He's nigh invulnerable and he's super strong. That was his deal. He's in a blue and red costume with a star on his chest. It's so close. It's like frustrating to see it, but they're definitely not talking about that character. They're just like talking about like here's a generic superhero idea out there. and like Superman is almost that, but he's a little bit more grounded in pop culture. There's a little bit more to reference, but everyone fucking knows who he is.
Yeah.
Everyone knows those details. And if you slip up something, no one fucking cares.
Yeah.
Like,
For sure. And like, it doesn't mean that songs like Luther don't have their place where they are hyper specific. Those songs, like I feel like someone who's not a Superman fan could enjoy that song, especially if you still like hip hop. But Superman fans will absolutely love that song because it's like they said the thing, they referenced the thing.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
The thing.
Yeah, pretty much. And I love that side of it too. And I don't and also I want to be clear, I'm not hypothesizing that there's a right way to do it. Like I think there's a wrong way to do it, and it's Superman by Eminem. But I don't think that there's like a right way to do it. I think
I don't even know if that's a wrong way.
I know.
Frankly.
It's just
like,
not
aside from the issues with like that style of rap, which has fallen out of fashion anyway. So like clearly less important. And it, whatever. Like Eminem is complicated.
Yeah.
Like he's also been like on the right side of a lot of politics too.
Sure.
So I'm like,
I'm mostly joking with that. I think it's more though that I think your taste is going to determine what preference you have for a type of Superman song. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way. Like, do I prefer the ones that are just a one-off reference? Not so much, but I'm also not listening to Superman by Goldfinger because it's a Superman song. I'm listening to it because it's a kick-ass ska song that I want to skank to. Like, and so I think that's also the difference is like some songs you want to hear the reference, you want to live in that world that the song is creating, and sometimes you just want to dance and have fun. And I think that it both can work. It just depends on where you're going for that kind of thing and what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I guess I would say the best do both.
Yes.
The best provide all of those things.
Sure.
Like Goldfinger, Superman could have like just a hint more, and I would love it even more.
Yeah.
Because certainly, but like it's not why I would have heard it in the first place.
Right.
It's not why I would have downloaded it on Napster in the first place. The fact that it's called Superman is the reason why it has made it from hard drive to hard drive over the years.
Sure.
But
yeah.
But I mean, like a little bit of a reference, cool. Deep reference is awesome. If it's a good song, is also very important. Like a song that is just like, hey, like I want to tell you about Superman. He was born on Krypton, came here. Like that would be a little bit rough. And I'm doing like a little bit of a country voice because I was surprised to find that there is a country song on this list. There was a Man of Steel by
Hank Williams Jr.
Yeah, so like that one I was surprised to see, and it's another one that's just like I can be the tough guy here. Like he does say Superman in addition to Man of Steel, but it's like I can toughen up and be like a big strong man type character. But it is interesting to see that there's no one genre. Also, like we've talked about rap, we've talked about show tunes because Holding Out for a Hero was originally for Footloose.
Yeah, sure was.
We've talked about all kinds of stuff on this, and so it's like it's nice to see that like and country is represented as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think it transcends, again, the genre that it's in because it's so well known. I also just really like that with music, you can convey, like we spent a whole episode talking about how with not a single lyric, you can convey Superman. It's the horns,
Ideally.
It's the drums. And so now we're on the other side where you're explicitly mentioning him. But even then, whether it's hyper detailed in a song like Luther or like barely detailed in a song like Superman, like I think both of them convey the character in different ways. I mean, there are horns in Superman by Goldfinger, so you know.
Right, yeah, exactly. Oh man, if only the horns were just like a little bit, if they had the ones that were the Superman ones.
God, that would break my brain because it's funny. And I think I said this in the last episode, but like I never explicitly said to myself, horns equal Superman. But when we talked about it, I was like, of course, this makes sense. And like that would just blow my mind if I went back and listened to Goldfinger and had the little like in the background. I'd be like, what?
I would love like a ska version of the John Williams.
It has to exist. Rule 34.
There.
Like, there's no way that doesn't
probably
exist.
does exist.
But I think that I also think Superman is a character that like I like to joke that he is a boring character, but it's not true. Like especially modern iterations of him that's shown him go through so much. And like I'm curious as how this character has evolved, how we might see this music evolve too. I mean, like I wanted to say as half a joke is like his son being out and queer. Like I would love like a queer club banger for his theme or something, like, or someone to write about that specific version of Superman and make it like a queer club hit or some kind of like runway song or something, like something that feels inherently queer. Like that sounds fun to me, and I don't know if that exists. It might, but if it doesn't,
not yet.
right?
It
Not
probably will
yet.
soon.
And like I like those kinds of ideas also. Like I'm actually surprised. I didn't do an explicit search, but like just broadly, I didn't see much about Lois Lane. Like references for sure, but I don't really see any songs about Lois Lane. They may be out there, but like I would love to see more of the other not ancillary, but like other characters in the Superman world, like Luthor by Lex, to get their own songs too. I think that would be a lot of fun.
So it is funny though that when you mentioned Lois Lane, like she is explicitly referenced in Rapper's Delight, which is
Yes.
often considered the first rap song.
That's true. You're right.
So-
Absolutely.
There are elements there, but that's also then still from the perspective of like I can be your Superman if you're my Lois Lane, like where it's like the sort of sexual relationship, which is in a part of certain genres of music and like particularly certain types of storytelling that is done within those song styles. Like a lot of country, a lot of rap, a lot of those like have like I am going to win you over because I'm such a cool dude kind of vibe to it, however you define cool and like for whatever reasons. So there are, so I guess there are elements there, but like the modern cultural understanding of Lois Lane as such a badass is I'm very here for now, because like there's definitely a lot of people who are brought up on like the "Can you read my mind" kind of like the 70s Superman movie kind of take, where it's like a bit more of a damsel and like that's kind of a bummer, versus as we established in the Man of Steel miniseries that relaunched the character in the 80s, she has like the highest body count of anyone in the whole thing. Terrorists attack a boat she's on and she just kicks a guy in the nuts, steals his Uzi, and just starts firing off like Lois Lane. Crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like Superman. I keep prefacing it because I don't want anyone to think I hate Superman, but like it is a very hetero story. It was written by hetero men. Like it was written by Jews, which is why anytime a right wing anybody says they like Superman, I'm like, how? Do you not get it? It's like everyone says, I wish Star Trek wasn't so woke. Did you never watch this show?
Yeah, have you never watched the Star Trek show?
Like, but that complaining aside,
But he is black on the other half of his face.
but like Superman is a very hetero story at its core, right? Like powerful dude, pretty woman, fall in love, have kids, whatever. And like there's nothing wrong with that, but like there isn't a lot of inherent queerness in Superman's early stuff. There's definitely a ton of it now. There are other queer characters and all of that stuff. And so I would love to see more of like what you're saying, like badass, like less chauvinistic Lois Lane and more like badass Lois Lane, written by women for women.
Investigator, Taylor's version.
I mean, I would listen to it. But yeah, I think that these songs, grouping them together, show though how like you can say Superman's ubiquitous and believe it. It's pretty common, but like the history of music through looking up Superman related like pop songs specifically and the like really show this broader culture that like was my hypothesis, but is absolutely true, that Superman is everywhere, has always been everywhere, and like you just look at music and you see it, right? Like because of all of the one-off references versus full songs about the character.
And he's been around so long is the other part. Like
80 years.
Having a conversation about like the Ballad of Barry Allen, where it's like, yeah, it's an early 2000s kind of like alt rock song that's like I really like. It's about a character who first showed up in 1958. That's still 20 years after Superman.
Yep.
Superman has been around for a long time. He was like the face of the U.S. government during World War II. They sent so much material over to the troops. They had so much like propaganda that was using Superman because that was like such a good symbol there.
Yeah.
It is such a fixture of pop culture that it has trickled out in weird ways. Like I had no expectation that I would have a Barbra Streisand song on this list.
Yeah. Well, and like we're specifically obviously coming from three people who live in the U.S., but like Truth, Justice, and the American Way. Like realistically, Superman doesn't give a shit about America. He's not American. Like he just lives here. He's an illegal alien. Sorry. But like truthfully, like he was so ingrained in American culture, and so it makes sense that there would be, not just toys and TV shows and comic books, and movies, but music as well. That's not just music to support the media made for him, but also music that just reference him, is about him, has things about him in it.
Yeah. And like there's all kinds of stuff. You know, we've alluded to all these different genres and so forth. And like we've touched on musicals, and I do want to call out a thing that it's not a song element, but it was just part of the musical, which is for Godspell. Traditionally, you would dress Jesus as in a Superman T-shirt to convey that he's supposed to be the symbol of good. Like, it's an interesting spot where like the iconography of pop culture actually is easier to sell than like the straightforward like religious elements of that show, where it's like, yeah, it's like, don't worry about him being like specifically a Christian thing. It's just he's saying just good stuff in this whole, and we're going to sell you on that by having him wear a Superman shirt, which I thought was like a really interesting one there. And I did also want to call out a song from Next to Normal, which stuck out for me mostly because like that show was running off Broadway when I first moved to New York. I love that show. I saw it with Brian Darcy James doing the dad. It was so much fun, and like we were all obsessed with that soundtrack at the time. And there's Superboy and the Invisible Girl on there, where the daughter trying. Spoilers for Next to Normal, a Broadway show that has been, at the very least, nominated for Tonys a decade ago. I don't know how.
I mean, this is news to me.
Next to Normal it's a spoiler for like the first big reveal of the show, which is that the son, who is like one of the main characters singing and whatnot, is actually dead, and that it's all the people sort of feeling the specter of this one person from the household. And so the song Superboy and the Invisible Girl is by his sister, singing about how like everyone can't stop thinking about the dead brother, and how like no one even can pay attention to the trauma she's going through. And it's such an interesting element there where like the lyrics are very explicitly using like superhero iconography to compare the state of existence, where like kind of what we're saying about Superman in general, like it's a big broad metaphor for like good, and it's very easy to apply to things that aren't right in front of you, because you don't have to deal with like the actual flaws in them, which is why a lot of the songs that are better on this list are ones where it's like, I'm not Superman, I'm cracking under the pressure kind of stuff. And this is a song that's like that, where it's like, yeah, her parents look right through her because all they can focus on is the brother who isn't even in the room. And I just wanted to call that one out because I have a big emotional connection with that one.
Yeah.
Like, fuck it, it's my show.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I think ultimately why I still love Superman as a character is because of the humility that he portrays, that even though he's invincible, it doesn't mean he's necessarily unstoppable. Like, he can still feel pain emotionally. He can still like have his heart broken. He can still like all of that stuff. And the way they've humanized Superman, especially recently in TV, movies, and comics, like, I love that side of it. It's why I get so exhausted by the dark Superman take, or like I never saw that horror movie take on Superman. I get why yeah, I get why it exists, and I get why people even like it, but that's like, I just don't want to watch that Superman story. It's why I ultimately don't like Man of Steel that much. It's not, and we've talked about this before, but like, I think this gets to the core of it. It's not because it's a bad Superman movie, right? It's actually not that bad. It's because there's still this dark tone to it that just doesn't feel like Superman to me. Like, I get not trusting him. I get all of that stuff in the storyline. But like, if we want to make him kill someone, if we want to make him be dark and angsty, like, yes, but also Superman is a symbol of hope and makes other people feel hopeful. If you take that from the character, it's why I'll tie it back to the Eminem song, right? The reason I'm so hard on it is because that song has very little to do with hope, and not every song has to, but like, there just doesn't feel anything Superman about that song other than Superman equals super sexy, which is fine. And I think that's where the Superman media is at its best, is when it is instilling us with hope. Even in the most devastating of moments, there's still this spark of hope. It's what those original movies did really well. It's what the, Tim Daly led cartoon did very well. Like, even when Superman was in a moment of despair, we knew that there was still hope around the corner. It was going to come back around. And I think the songs that portray that are the best of those moments.
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to is like the key dissonance of how we as a pop culture understand Superman versus like what the stories they're trying to do are saying.
Yeah.
Like, Superman, as evidenced by all of these songs, is about someone who is good.
Yeah.
That's just how we understand it in pop culture. And the idea of doing a story that is a deviation from that, I think, is interesting, as long as we keep affirming the fact that like the default when we say Superman, like, is not just that you're saying someone is powerful, you're saying someone is good, and then to say, all right, this is a deviation for X reason or Y reason, and then, but we're going to keep resetting to the status quo for like the mainstream. The problem of a lot of the media today is because people don't have like a strong through line that they want to like really work with that is in that sort of optimistic, hopeful kind of sense. That we're constantly deviating from the thing, but like almost to the point where deviations have become the norm in like their explicit pop cultures thing. But again, the core understanding of our pop culture knowledge of Superman is that he's a good guy, and that if you say like you can have scenes in like The Simpsons where it's just like, I've never really been a praying man, but if you're out there, please save me, Superman. Like, those moments exist because like it is a fundamental metaphor for someone doing the right thing when they have the power to do it. And any sort of point where you deviate from that, you have to justify why. Like, I just picked up the omnibus for Irredeemable, like the Mark Waid book, where it's like, what if Superman, after like years of like hearing everyone talk behind his back, finally went nuts? And like, that's a great comic. It's told really well. It's because Mark Waid can write the shit out of Superman. Like, he's doing the Amazing World's Finest book at the moment. Like just has done incredible Superman stories. Like, you know, obviously like Kingdom Come, which is seen as like a dark Superman story, but in the end, Superman chooses hope. You know, like that is always the point you have to get to. Like, whenever you show like the darkness possible in the genre, you have to get to the hope somewhere in there, either Superman directly or someone like Invincible, where like secretly Invincible is the Superman character in that story, even though his dad looks like the Superman character in the story. Yeah. Like that's the thing there. Like, ultimately, that character is the symbol of hope in it all. And like, clearly our language, our music all lends itself to that big major key hero stepping in and making us feel safe. And music oftentimes makes us feel comfortable or good or happy or charged. And Superman songs tend to lend themselves towards like making you feel like you are in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, totally. And before we get too far away from it, though, I like what you said about like that Superman can be dark, but it always has to come back to hope. And I think it's why I get so mad about the people who are like, oh, just make a dark Superman. It's like, if we flipped it on its head and went, well, why just make a bright and shiny Batman? It sounds dumb, right? Without context.
It's not Batman.
Right. But that Batman does exist. It's the Adam West Batman. I still argue one of the best versions of Batman because it still gets the core of the character down. But the thing is that Batman comes back to not being about hope. That even though Bruce is suave and smart and like Batman can get things done, something always goes wrong. He's always got to save the day and figure it out. Like, there are elements of the darker Batman within that story. I think the core of those characters still have to exist, even when you flip it on its head. Otherwise, you just have like a premise, and it's fine. But like, you be smarter about it. I just don't want a Superman that murders people. That's boring. Like, on its head. But if you do something with that narrative, that's a different story. And same with Batman, same with any other superhero.
Well, I mean, like, when, not to go too far into the movies kind of thing, but like talking about Batman stuff, like Batman, I don't think is the inverse of Superman.
No.
I think that there's a reason they are world's finest together. Yeah. I think that the strength of stuff like the Nolan movies, of like the most recent Matt Reeves Batman movie, are that they start from a place of darkness, and then each one of those movies ends in a place of hope.
Yep.
Where things are better because the heroic actions of this character. It's not a crapsack world that's just getting worse, and that it's, you know, it's not a character who is just slowing the inevitable tide of bad or making it worse in the first place. Like, you know, Batman is actively making the world a better place, and sometimes he has to learn to make a world a better place because he's motivated by tragedy in a way that Superman isn't. Like, Superman has tragedy in his background, but it isn't his like motivating factor. It's in fact like the element of like, I have the ability to make things better, so why can't I do it? I feel like I couldn't before. It's not because I couldn't at the time, but like I didn't save Krypton because I was a baby, but now I have the power to save this world, and I can do that. And so I think that's the thing people are missing, where it's like all the Batman movies end with a note of hope at the end, and every time they do a dark Superman story, we have to remind them like put that in there.
Yeah,
like in the movie, things are better.
Yeah, totally. But I think you're right also when it comes to music. I think it's very translatable, and I think that because Superman always comes back to hope, that's what makes it translatable, even if the song isn't inherently about hope. Again, we have some songs on this list that are just kind of tangentially or lewdly in a wildly different direction. But I think ultimately the character of Superman inspires hope or brings hope or or on the very bare bones of it, puts a smile on someone's face. The mention of Superman mostly puts a smile on someone's face. So even in a song by Eminem or like Soulja Boy's song, like the mention of Superman puts a smile on someone's face because it's a reference. They understand. It's a character of hope, even if that song or moment isn't about the same hope we want to draw from Superman.
Yeah. I mean, clearly looking at all these conversations about Superman songs, you know, a shocking amount of material that people have tried in all kinds of different ways. J. Mike, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that's on this list? I know that there were a shitload of songs that you thought that we'd already like cited, but it's just because we found a big list.
No, I'm not going to torture you guys with the Daughtry stuff because that's like we've been there. We had to grow up through all that stuff. It's all good.
Thank you. That was that game of chicken I was playing with you just now. I was like, is he going to talk about Daughtry?
I'm not going to make us relive those years. Okay, we lived in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
you know, like there are fun ones on this list. Like I've got the REM song. It was originally by The Click, but REM does the cover, and most people know the cover.
Yeah.
You know, like that's just a light and fluffy Superman song. Like you know, a lot of these are just like he's like, I can see through you because I know everything. I'm capable. I am everything. Is the lyrics on that one, and it's like, yeah, sure. I guess like I can see right through you is like a double entendre for X-ray vision and other stuff, but like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, and like we have the Remy Zero song on here. We talked about that in the last episode, but it's a pop song. Like it fits on this list too because it not only
fits better on this list,
right?
Yeah.
Like, because we talked about how a lot of us didn't like it because it was a pop song where everything else was more instrumental. But here it totally works, even if it was never the theme for Smallville, because it's just a very good, well-made pop song that conveys the feeling of Superman.
That's a song that feels very much like a Lois Lane falling from the building kind of song.
Yeah, I would agree.
Even though it's like a male singer on there. And then there's like, we've got Alanis Morissette.
Oh my God, from her pop era. If you've not heard Alanis Morissette's song, Superman's, a lot of folk think that Jagged Little Pill was her first album. And ostensibly, for her popularity at least, it was. But she had a previous record, self-titled, I believe, that was full of pop songs. She was just a Canadian pop star, and one of them is about Superman. And it's a cool little song. It's not anything groundbreaking, but it's a fun little pop song.
Yeah, it says Superman in it,
yes.
And that's about all that like ties it to this list.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but like suffice it to say, there is a huge breadth of material for us to talk about that's like music related. I mean, obviously we talked about the themes already. We talked about this, you know. So we're not doing next time the musical, but we are going to talk about the musical at some point.
I still can't believe there was a musical, man.
Yeah, so for listeners who are not familiar, back in the 70s, there was a show called It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman.
Yep.
Which is, it's a Superman musical. It's a weird show.
Yeah.
One of the tracks actually became like a pop song of the day. Like, I forget which one off the top of my head, but when I was listening, I was like, wait a second. I know this song. We're not talking about it next because we're moving on. But we do actually want to have that conversation. So this is not the end of us talking about music related to Superman stuff. And I know that if we said like, hey, we just did an episode all about the themes of Superman, and then here's all this music of Superman, people would be like, well, what about the musical that is Superman? Yeah. So that's why like the bulk of our musical theater stuff was like towards the end of this list because we wanted to like sort of segue there. But so when we come back next time, we're going to be talking about Superman Doomsday. And we're actually pretty close to our 100th episode. So we've got a bunch of like big episodes in the works. We'll be talking about All-Star Superman finally. And then we'll be talking about All-Star Superman finally because it's worth 2 parts. And we've got like a lot of big stuff coming up, but eventually we will be talking about the Superman musical. And Matt, as our editor, I am so sorry to be putting you through that conversation.
It's fine.
Because the guests we've got lined up are theatrical people.
Okay. Look, I've seen bits and pieces of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. It's no way it's worse than that. It's not possible to be worse than that.
Wait, hold up. Spider-Man had a musical?
Oh, J-Mike, tell me you've lived under a rock and actually don't know that there was a Spider-Man musical.
Oh, God, I know this is a good thing. Maybe I shouldn't have admitted that.
No. Yeah,
oh, man.
Yeah. It's
not just was there a Spider-Man musical with music by The Edge from U2.
It's bad.
And was it Baz Luhrmann?
Yeah, and it follows, like, it has all the villains in it. Like, Carnage is in it, Venom's in it, like, Green Goblin's in it, Doc Ock. Like,
This sounds hilariously bad.
It's so bad. Well,
the most important part is that it was so hilariously bad that it had to be shut down and restaged because it was so bad. And also, it was so bad in the way that like actors kept on being horrifically injured in ways that were terrible.
Yep.
And like honestly, honestly, it's one of those horror stories that people bring up for like why equity is important as a union to protect the actors, because it was fucked up.
Yeah.
Like it went real bad.
They put Spider-Man on ropes and pulleys and stuff, and like actors kept getting hurt. Like the villains kept getting hurt.
Yeah,
Like,
I had a friend in the audience when like Spider-Man just like fell from the rigging into the audience, and like I don't think he survived, but that was about all you can really say for it. Like the act that went through bad stuff.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah. I can't believe you didn't know this. I didn't think that was such a very New York thing, but here we are. Yeah, Google Spider-Man
Dude,
turn
I'm
off
from
the
Florida.
dog. Yeah,
I'm from Florida, dude.
yeah, crazy.
Julie
know
Taymor,
what's
that's who I was thinking of for the director on that one. Yeah. The music was by Bono and The Edge, and it's
bad.
It's a trip,
It's
man.
bad.
It's
so bad.
It's a
My gosh.
I mostly want J. Mike to see it for the costumes, because the costumes were great in a terrible way.
yeah, they're wild.
They're just wild. They feel like
I'm
masquerade heads. It's bad. Yeah. Now
That's
I've
awesome.
completely derailed this podcast
no,
with
it's
Spider-Man
fine.
stuff.
Yeah, so when we do have this conversation about it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman, we are going to take it from the perspective of a production meeting where we try to figure out how we would actually do a good Superman musical from that. So, listeners, we will be back eventually with that one. But like I said, we've got a lot of really great stuff coming up. Great stuff that Matt, you as our editor, will be working on. But you're also working on tons of great stuff yourself. So why don't you give some plugs, even if it's just like saying verbatim what your Linktree link is, because you've got so much stuff going on.
So I do want to actually shout out my most recent gig I picked up. I am the freelance editor for the Game Informer show. Anyone who likes video games know Game Informer's been around for ages. It's one of the longest running video game magazines that's still running. And that show was shifting from video and audio to just audio. And the current host, Alex Van Aken, asked me to join the team. And so I am a freelance editor for that. That's really cool. As of when you're hearing this, I've edited the last 2 episodes. But since pretty much episode 616 and beyond, that's me editing. So definitely check that out. It's really cool. But if you want to check out all the other stuff I'm doing, it's at djstormageddon.com. I edit for a ton of podcasts on this network. I edit for a ton of shit off this network. If you want to buy my merch, I also have a merch store with cool t-shirts, mugs, tote bags. Everyone loves a tote bag. And yeah, I could like freewheel pitch everything that I do, but it just would take too long. So again, go to djstormageddon.com or just follow me on Twitter at DJ_Stormageddon.
Yes, everyone should go do that because Matt's awesome. Matt is our editor, as I've said a couple of times on the show.
Extremely
Matt is the only reason this show is able to continue functioning the way it does. There is a reason why Scruffy Nerf Herders has not had an episode in a year.
I will not edit an actual play podcast. That is my
Oh my
limit.
God, it is
Cannot do it.
It is 10 minutes for every minute at least.
Yeah, will not do it.
And those episodes are like 3 hours long. Yeah, man, that's a full-time job. I I have so much respect for all the people who are out there editing those real play podcasts, like Dave Stewart for Greetings Adventures. Like, great guy. I don't know how he has a life. But yeah, so everyone should check out all the stuff you're working on. They should go find you on Twitter, follow you, Matt, because you're awesome. And then they should head on over to JMike101 because they should follow JMike on Twitter as well.
You follow up after Matt.
J Mike's a great follow. He's got a good gift game.
I'm just a guy on Twitter. There you go.
Look,
Enjoy.
just as someone who's not just a person on Twitter, it's not all that's cracked up to be. You're fine. You're doing great, J Mike. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, you're probably using the website the way it was like actually intended in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Whereas like I'm like, well, I have to go on and retweet a certain number of times to build my brand. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Case Aiken. You can find the podcast at Men of Steel Pod because thankfully Matt pointed out to me one day that my running joke, which was not actually a joke, which was just me being mad that it had assigned me a 14 as a random number, that I could change it. And I didn't realize that I could.
I've done that for several people. Someone who I will not name names, who is also on our network, didn't know they could rename their Twitter handle either. So I spread the knowledge. That's what I'm here for.
So everyone should check out all of us on Twitter. They should check out the show on Twitter. They should head over to certainpov.com where they can find so many shows, of which we work on a lot of them
Yes,
between the three of us.
that's true.
So there's a lot of that. You should check out our YouTube content. We've been putting out a ton of stuff recently. So the Men of Steel podcast, as well as Another Pass, we're now putting out clips for episodes that came out the previous week. So the week after this episode drops, there will be 3 clips going out Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday for the show. So it'll be stuff from this, but it'll be animated with visual aids. So check that out. Check out the stuff from Another Past. Check out the Superman analog videos I've been doing. We've actually, like, our YouTube count has gone up a ton in the last year. We've just cracked 400, which is pretty cool considering that in January we were at 100. So that's like actually pretty big. I'm very excited with the number of people who've actually gotten into it. So check all that out and then come back. Like I said, next time we're going to be talking about Superman Doomsday, and we've got a ton of like awesome content coming up after that. So we're barreling down towards episode 100. We've got big stuff in store for it. We've got tons of great ideas for it. And this has just been a really fun ride. Like, J. Mike, having you as my co-host has been wonderful. Matt, having you as the editor on this one has been wonderful. Like, we have so much we haven't talked about on this topic. Like, how the hell have we not talked about some of the things? Like, we haven't actually done an episode on the Max Fleischer cartoons yet.
Nope. We have not. That's true.
Like, there's so much material out there. We could be going for forever. And hopefully we do, if you keep listening, guys. So, like I said, we've got tons of great stuff in the works. But until then, stay super, man.
Men of Steel is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are J. Mike Folsom and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Matt Storm. Our logo is by Chris Batista. Episode art is by Case Aiken. And our theme is by Geoff Moonen.
All right, let's do a clap to sync up. 1, 2, 3, and then clap. 1, 2, 3.
Sounded like it was in sync, so
yeah,
that's always nice.
We're doing it. It's happening, guys.
Look, there have been so many episodes I've edited lately where it's like clap, clap, and then like the third one's half a second later. I'm like, oh, come on.
Well, I mean, again, that's just so you can see roughly where it is. And then when I'm like, hey, this is Matt, and you say hi, you're like, if it's like 5 seconds and then hi, then we know like, oh, the track's off.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, back in the day, I'd give you, like, a track that I'd start recording right when I got on the call, and other people would be, like, all over the place on it. So
yeah, in the early days of this show, you'd have, like, an hour, like, what felt like an hour of lead up, and J. Mike would have 5 minutes. And I'm like, where the fuck are you guys? What's happening?
Yeah. Well, that's why, when I was editing the show, I would always put the audio tracks. I would sync up to the end because that was usually a more accurate. Like the end point was probably closer together, and then I knew I had to nudge it regardless. But like it was probably more in line.
I mean, that's why I have my guests on autographs do the sign off. Like I prep them and then they do it because then my end and their beginning will always line up at the end, and then I can go backwards.
Yeah.
Because I'm a genius. No, I didn't plan that at all. It's just a happy accident, and I take advantage of it.
Okay. Well, happy accidents are what we do here at Certain POV.
That's true.
Yay.
Hi, I'm Matt, aka Stormageddon, and I'm the host of CPOV Autographs at certainpov.com. It is a bi-weekly interview series where I interview folks from all over the arts, from writers to comedians to magicians to musicians, even actors, historians, podcasters, pretty much anyone who's willing to chat with me for a little bit. If you like interesting conversations with even more interesting people, go to certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, music is life, and life is good.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.